The Break Area by bigalstory. The break area was hard to describe, illuminated from the inside by low energy forces.
G'day, bigalstory here, coming at ya. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Facebook. Now this next story that I've written it's called The Break Area. The genre for this story would be dystopian futuristic virtual reality world. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually a genre, but you get the idea. It's pretty topical for the moment because the metaverse has just been introduced. The Matrix has just come out recently, and yeah, so it's along those lines. There has been a bit of a theme that I've been working on with a few of my stories about this futuristic dystopian stuff. And I'm not the sort of person, like I haven't even seen The Matrix. I've never even seen Star Wars. I'm not a Star Trekkie or whatever. But a lot of this, for some reason, it just keeps coming up when I go to write something. There's been like at least 3 or 4 stories now that have come out as this one theme. But I definitely wouldn't say that I fit into this theme either. Within a story, there's sort of no boundaries. You can anything can happen. The potentials are really wide and open. So that sort of, I like that. And that's cool. But what I don't want to do is say, okay, well, this is my genre, these are the only things that are going to fit in it. Like, maybe my thing is that, like, I do stories and each one of them is a complete entity on its own, because, you know, the last couple of stories I've written, one is a self-discovery spiritual journey road trip. That's the big story I'm writing. One's about taking a dump in the park. This one is like a futuristic dystopian virtual reality. One is about a guy that commits suicide by jumping off, it's not funny, commits suicide by jumping off a bridge. It doesn't seem like there's any theme to my stories, apart from the fact that I'm a storyteller. That's what I've been trying to say for the last 4 minutes. Alright, jump in, have a listen to this story. Don't forget to subscribe to bigalstory on Facebook and YouTube. Just before I go, some people used to say I look like Keanu Reeves. If you agree with that, then just give us a thumbs up. If you don't, I don't want to hear from you. Check it out, yo.
The break area was hard to describe, illuminated from the inside by low energy forces. Orange cigarette embers synergized with the blue light from devices just enough for them to see each other. A darkness surrounded the frames of their gaunt bodies. The fuel that feeds their important work does not glow. It pumps silently through their veins. Veins in the darkness of flesh pump a silent supply of stilted conversation. Mostly they speak about their work. And what does their work entail? Just one thing: survival. It feels like a game, but their one and only goal is to stay alive. In some strange way they love it, and they love to talk about it. Cigarettes, devices, energy drink. The combination of these 3 tenuous ingredients allows the break area to continue. But it is conversation, and conversation alone, that ensures the ultimate survival and damp illumination of this break area phenomenon. How's it all going? Yeah, good. Making progress. How about you? Yeah, surviving. When the conversation isn't pumping, the 3 dark figures sit in abject silence. Faces shimmer in the blue light of device interactions. Their cigarettes draw shorter as a retreat to the darkness looms. Like moths back to the darkness, they will flutter. It's hard to know what hides unseen in the darkness beyond the break area. There could be a roof up above, but it's hard to tell. The floor is not earth. Soft winds, neither warm nor cool, float up through the cold steel mesh. Above and below, the darkness has a feeling, and it surrounds them completely with a penetrating ambience. An industrial hum drones constantly. It's hard to know which direction it comes from, or even what it comes from. The consensus from our in-depth conversations over the past while suggests that it probably comes from an industrial air conditioner. The participants of the break area are both transient and regulars. Because we have no predictable timetable or register of attendance, nobody really knows who started the conversation that the sound is from an air conditioner. But the idea of an air conditioner making the noise, it's what's commonly accepted in this space. It might sound unimportant, but it's probably one of the strongest things that holds us together. You might say it's our own little culture. If we stopped talking about it, the conversation would stop. And if the conversation stopped, the break area might not survive. It could disappear into the darkness like we all tend to do. Some time ago, it actually turned off for a period. The space it left in our minds made our conversation burn hotter than I can ever remember. It tested our faith. Everyone panicked, but I loved it. The extra conversation warmed my mind and my chest. It took everyone a while to catch up, but everyone now agrees. It was undoubtedly a luminous occasion, the likes of which we may never hear again. And when we don't agree on this, it fuels even more conversation. I live for conversation. Me? I'm just an average guy. It's hard to say exactly how long I've been using the break area, but when I'm not at work in the game, I find myself here, chatting to people about anything before we disappear back into the darkness. The conversation here is usually pretty damp, much less flowing and animated than in the game, but the difference is it's real conversation. The game is a digital space that exists for us all to use. We spend the majority of our time in there. The rest of our time is spent outside, out here, attending to our bodily needs. This space doesn't really have a name. Some people call it the reality, but that's not really an official name. The break area is not really an official name either, but that's what we call it. Someone I once met here said that it's similar to the word breakfast, in that there is a break from the fast. The break area is a break from the digital area of the game. She also said that it's not until you get here that you are reminded what a fast your body's been on. If it wasn't for that conversation, I would probably never have been introduced to the word breakfast. I sometimes dream of staying here forever, but I've never really dreamt. Dreaming is just something we all talk about. None of us really know if we've ever had a real one. It's impossible to dream when it's impossible to sleep. An old friend of mine says you can't sleep in the break area, because your dream state is like a currency, and currencies can run out. If you play the game, you pretty much spend all of your currency there. It's impossible to dream in the game because it's just not possible. You can earn dream currency, but it's different to sleep. So the break area has its illuminating moments that keep us returning like moths from the dark. But the reality of the situation is that there's a persistent darkness that extends in all directions. It conceals very real objects, rock-solid computer stacks, inanimate bodies, walls, shapes. They're all potentially dangerous, but if you go slow, you're usually okay. You don't have to go far really, you just need a spot. A small corner to sit in with enough room to swing your arms and legs around. You select the game icon on your device, you attach your device to the mask, and the mask to your face, and you're in. The game starts off quite abstract. The horizon is usually a thin line and the buildings and landscape are just triangulated shapes. As you feel into it and interact, the shapes and lines fill out more. Within about 30 breaths or so, you're in. Clear air, unique buildings, and so many different people. The buildings and trees are easily programmed and quite beautiful. The dirt, rocks and mountains aren't as systemized, so they aren't as easily programmed. They could probably program one or two really well, but generally speaking, they don't look anything like the real thing. Not that we know what the real thing is. If you get out of the city, the dirt graphics just don't look right. The closer you look, the more they break down. The game is a quite cohesive area with many accepted rules, but not everything can be programmed. It all feels like a game, but our leaders tell us that it's life. They say, what is life if it's not a game? The process of checking in usually starts with a curious familiarity. People say it feels like you're returning home. However, I know for a fact that nobody in the game knows what it feels like to return to home. Nobody has one. After the familiarity, you get an odd, liberated feeling. As the horizon fills out with images, you are reminded that you can go anywhere, do anything. We call it the game, but some people say it's just as big as the world. Nobody has seen the world, but it's believed to have existed some time ago. Supposedly, you could have travelled as far as you wanted in any direction and never have met the edge. Anyways, the game is huge. You can indeed go anywhere and do anything, but that liberated feeling starts much closer than the horizon. There's illegal sex workers if you know where to look. They usually hide in the gardens, but not too far out from the city centre. They're always fun to find and play with, but they're not really the objective of the game. You can travel anywhere, do anything, if you've got the time and resources, but it's not really the objective of the game either. Dream currency, water, materials, kwama, books. It's a constant surprise to see what you'll be given, but the resources aren't really the aim of the game. There is a side objective in the game. It's so significant that it sometimes feels bigger than the main objective. For so many people, finding the authority building is their life's work. There are sanctioned clubs dedicated to this one objective. When they're not actively seeking the authority building, they're talking about it. I don't think it's ever been found, but it's hard to really know. Rumour has it that the few lucky people that have found it walk among us. After witnessing the truth and magnificence of what's there, they could never share the secret of where it is or what's inside. Well, that's what's said anyways. Finding the authority building is not the objective of the game, but for many participants it definitely becomes the objective. People have lived and died in its pursuit. Sex, resources, the authority building, none of these pursuits are the objective. The only true objective is to survive. The opposite to survival is something altogether a bit harder to explain. The opposite to survival is not really death. It's never really spoken about deeply. I think everyone generally agrees that there are three things you want to avoid. Deletion. The authorities reserve the right to delete anyone. It is similar to death, but nobody really knows where you are deleted to. Nobody knows if you'll return to your body or not. We know that once you go, you don't come back. Violence. Violence just feels bad, but it has important consequences. If you are injured to the point that you can't check out and return to take care of your real body may die. If your real body dies, an inanimate shell of your game body remains suspended in the game. Nobody knows if you'll return to your real body to die. Self-harm. Self-harm comes in many forms: distraction, poor diet, indulgence, depression. Whatever form it takes, it's important that you don't allow it to help you commit the cardinal sin. The cardinal sin is failing to check out periodically. Without checking out, your real body can just stop. The authorities don't have the right to delete you when this happens, so there are some soulless humans that just drone around. Nobody really knows if they're dead or not, but they lose the life in their eyes. A few of us have set up a meeting space in the city, sort of like a club. It feels different to the break area outside the game, but I guess it's sort of similar. Conversation and learning is what brings us together. If you set up something like this too far out of town, the authorities seem to find it pretty quickly. If it's too close to the centre, they'll find it and break it up just as quick. Our little spot is almost on the outskirts of the city, but not quite. There's a legal but discreet brothel on an ordinary street. We hang out next to the aircon unit on the roof. It's industrial and dirty, but fairly neat. There's a relatively large tin roof above us to stop the rain from dropping into the aircon fan. It's not luxurious, but we love it. It seats about 8 of us at any one time. My friend Joseph 121 is probably the person that found the spot, and he has a theory on why we haven't been found yet. Sex gives off a certain energetic signature code. It masks what we do, he always says. He always has a lot to say, but he can answer our questions too. Today is a day like any other. Clear blue skies above our small tin roof. There's 4 of us in the group, but one of us leaves. Now it's just me, some guy, and Joseph 121. The conversation of the moment seems to be about how we haven't been caught yet. There's a lot of different types and qualities of sex, but it always has a genuineness. People want to do it, he says. What about rape? I ask. Wow, you always go there, don't you? Where? To the extreme and for no reason at all. But in answer to your question, yes, even rape. There's very little fakeness to sex. You simply and genuinely want to do it, or you don't. He seems to have an answer for everything. It's probably why I keep asking questions. Well, in the case of rape, isn't there usually someone that really does want to do it, and someone that really doesn't? I ask. Yes, and some might say to quite a high degree. And you're saying that when you put them together, overall, they give off a genuine energetic signature code. Yep, he says with his usual confidence. They're genuine emotions. Interesting. And how exactly does this all protect us from the authorities? Well, conversation is much the same. You mean it's genuine? Well, our conversation is genuine, and it only ever involves two people at a time. The energetic signature in the coding we emit is very similar to sex. Oh, I thought we were all just chatting. I wink at him, but he doesn't seem to receive the joke. Are you trying to get us caught? He whispers. No. Joking after sex is a sign of love. The authorities could be here in a flash. Sorry, but we didn't have sex. It's alright, you weren't to know. Joseph 121 is like that. Forgiving, knowledgeable, creative, aware of the moment. An ESC is an energetic signature code. It's emitted from your thoughts and emotions into the digital environment. There are no rules as to what ESCs you can emit. Nothing's illegal, but you can definitely be deleted or receive reprisals shortly after strong thoughts. There's a general understanding. Telling Joseph 121 that I love him would definitely be a no-no. Even thinking this is forbidden. But the truth is, I love him. I love him so, so deeply. I keep it hidden. I couldn't stand to see him deleted. If I actually ever had the courage to say it to his face, the authorities wouldn't even have time to arrive and take him away. Even I know that. He'd just be deleted on the spot. He's so smart that I'm sure he's probably already worked it out. A few more people arrive. Joseph 121 walks around the small group individually winking at them. With a serious tone he tells them to not wink back. I'm diffusing John's ESC. They obey immediately and sit down. He's sort of like our unofficial leader. It starts to rain lightly, but we're protected under the small tin roof. The hum of the aircon keeps us warm. He hands around some books. He often brings books. We all assume that he writes and illustrates them, but we're not actually sure. No one's ever dared to ask. He says, they're nothing special, they're just normal. History, secret knowledge, stuff like that. The following passage is from one of his books. He says that the ESC of the books isn't something that would flag the authorities because they're usually about content that is quite ordinary, normal stuff that we do every day, like eating kwama. The risky information is carefully woven in. None of us have heard of or even seen these bananas and raspberries or rocks that he writes about, but we believe him when he says they exist. I love it when he asks me to read to the group. With a slight grin in my voice, I read the passage to the other members. The only food we eat is a genetically programmed fruit called kwama. It's a bit shorter than an average banana and a bit thicker at one end. It's heavier than it looks. The skin is tough but flexible, like the skin of a lychee. The fruit itself is fleshy but very different to a lychee. You rip a line through the skin and then push your fingers through the side. It pops out with a satisfying glomp. The fruit inside has bumpy skin like a raspberry. The whole fruit itself is very clear. The light travels right through it. It's sort of like it's made of water pearls all stuck together. It's wobbly but not like jelly because when your teeth sink into it, it doesn't split like jelly. It folds around your teeth, a bit more like chewing gum or thick rubbery orthombic toffee. If you bite it just once, a chemical reaction takes place and spots of bright red liquid release the programs and flavours inside the fruit. The spots seem to glow pink. The surrounding flesh gradually stiffens and steadily becomes pink translucent. The longer you leave it, the thicker and chewier it gets, until the whole thing is a chewy light pink. Leave it a day and it turns to solid rock. Most of this information is quite ordinary to us. We eat kwama every day. But the writing is studded with mystical terms that keep us in a constant state of intrigue. We've got no idea where he gets all this information about these strange fruits and foods. He just tells us, it's all from the real world. It can all be seen in the plain light of day. We believe him. He seems to know a bit about everything, and the things he doesn't know for sure, he has very strong opinions on. For example, he reckons that it can be useful to pursue the objective of finding the authority building, but it's useless to actually think you'll find it, because it doesn't really exist. They just want you to think it maybe does exist, so you'll keep trying to find it, he says. I could listen to him talk about anything, all day. Could be normal, enlightening, rude. When you love someone, it really doesn't matter. Today he calls our meeting to an end early. I sense he's still nervous about our winking incident. Regardless, he always calls the meeting to an end by just walking out. If our protocols are followed, the risky ESC of one person speaking to a group can be masked as one person speaking to another person. It would call too much attention to our collective ESC if he concluded the meeting with a final statement. So he just walks out. Sometimes it's even mid-sentence. Today, for some reason, I follow him out. I'm not sure why, but I chase him down the ladder. His feet clunk on the ground, but he doesn't wait for me. Off down the street he walks. Wait! Wait, Joseph! The name's Joseph 121. You know that, 8 John 8. As I catch up to him, he stops walking and turns to look at me. You've got about 25 seconds before this situation gets way out of hand, 8 John 8. He swings his head and looks both ways down the street. There's no authority, no one at all. 20 seconds, 8 John 8. You know our ESC is a sitting duck in this street. Not a single person to mask us. I look him straight in the eyes. 10 seconds, 8 John 8. I want to be with you. I'm not sure what I expect. I had nothing planned, and this stretching moment is no different. He could wince in disappointment. He could just zap out of existence. He could look at me dumbfounded, or he might just hold me and say nothing. But he doesn't do any of these things. He looks back at me for a full 5 seconds. He winks at me in a very odd way. He does it with both eyes, at once. He walks away and doesn't look back. Is he hiding his energetic signature? Does he not love me? I don't know what it means, but the one thing I am certain of is that I'll never see him again. I walk down empty streets. I'm not looking for him. I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm not sure if my tears are technically illegal, but I can't hold them back. I cry as silently as possible, but the tears broadcast an unmistakable truth. After 5 empty streets, I'm convinced he didn't even wink. It was probably just a blink. After about 10 streets, I consider that he's probably blinked 30,000 times today. He's probably blinking right now at this very moment. I lose count of the streets, but a thought pops into my mind. It makes me want to smile. He probably knows the average of how many times a person blinks in a day. Ah, Joseph 121, I love you. I don't smile, I just sit on the closest seat. My body goes limp, my mind clunks to a standstill. I hold my head between my knees. The ache in my heart lessens slightly as I begin to accept that I will only have memories to fuel my survival. The unmistakable echo of authority boots approaches, louder and louder. When they're as loud as they're going to get, they stop. Our eyes meet. The authorities are like the rest of us, but for 2 important details. Firstly, and more importantly, they are artificial intelligence. Secondly, they have a checkout tab at the base of their neck, just below their ear. When you feel you're ready for a break, you just touch your finger on the tab and you're blasted back to reality. I continue looking at him. He says nothing, but looks very suspicious. When he finally speaks, his tone is far too friendly. You look like you're running on empty there, buddy. Yeah. Probably time to eat up or check out. He hands me a kwama. Thanks. I take the kwama and walk back in the direction of where I came. Joseph 121's advice runs through my head. Head back to where you approached from. It will show you're not guilty. Be careful what you're thinking when you make eye contact, especially with the authorities. Always use a person's full username, even in your internal dialogue. I try to block Joseph's voice by focusing on the authority behind me. His footsteps follow at an awkwardly close distance. The urge to run is real, but I know it would be useless. The authorities are programmed with higher permissions. If he really thought I was guilty, running would confirm it. And If he really thought I was guilty, then running would just confirm it. He'd appear in front of me and I'd run straight into him. I decide to sit down. He looks at me straight in the eyes. I think it is time to eat up or check out, he says. I can't get Joseph out of my mind. Kwama is a real fruit, but it only exists inside this game. Joseph says it suppresses your body's appetite in the real world, while allowing you to feel full in the game. Next to the authority's stunted smile, at the base of his neck, is the tab. The urge to check out is strong. Thanks for listening. It's definitely not finished. It's about halfway through. If I don't actually just put something out there though, I'll never actually share anything. I'll just spend the rest of my life recording stuff.
So yeah, make sure you jump on, subscribe on Facebook and YouTube, Big Al Story. Turn notifications on YouTube so you can hear when the rest of the story comes out. I'll try and get it in one piece. Yeah, so I've set a little timeline for myself on when to share. So even if stuff's not finished, I'm just going to pop it up anyway. I've got a question for you. Do you think the story takes too long to get going? Because the science fiction stuff is not something that I would normally do, and in science fiction it's very what's the term? It's very world building. So there's a term in writing and film called world building, and it often goes hand in hand with science fiction. So science fiction people would enjoy hearing about all the details of the world. Other people that aren't into science fiction might be a bit more like, all right, there's a world, tell me the human story within it. So because this is not usually something I would be into, I found it a bit difficult to get the conflict happening straight away. Anyway, give me your feedback if you think it's taken too long to get going. Another thing I'd like feedback on is this sort of stuff that I'm sharing. So like at the start of the film, I like tell you like a bit of background stuff. I've had a little bit of feedback from people that are like, just shut up and start the story. Other people are like, no, let it play. Yeah, give me some feedback on that. Make sure you subscribe to Big Al Story. And thanks for listening.